So good morning. Good morning. Welcome to day 8. Wow. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to day 8 of our um, business analyst, product owner, and then product management training. Yesterday, I believe this is where the bus ended. We ended here at the agile ceremonies. So we're gonna keep walking. We're gonna keep going today. So today we'll start off from here. We'll look at the process flow. This is the ecosystem of the Scrum methodology. So we're starting off from here. We're looking at the Scrum methodology, the ecosystem. So if I ask you a question, describe, Scrum for me, you need to be able to say some of these things that is out here. I put it into like a process flow type of thing. So in Scrum methodology, we have what we call sprints, right? You guys started hearing or started learning about sprint. I think when we started from Monday, you guys started hearing sprint. So we have sprints, right? And what are sprints? It's a set of iteration, like a 2 weeks iteration. It depends on the company that you're working with or the organization that you're working for. Sometimes a sprint can be 4 weeks, right? And pretty much, I believe, that is a max. We cannot have more than 4 weeks of sprint. If we're having 4 weeks of sprint, then I will suggest that that organization goes back to waterfall. if you're gonna go beyond 4 weeks of sprint, then I will advise that that organization goes goes back to the waterfall methodology. So each iteration of a Scrum is what we call a sprint, right? If each iteration of a Scrum is what we call sprint. So in Scrum, you guys remember, yes, I think Monday session, I talk about the difference between Scrum and Kanban, right? Scrum, we have a time box release cycle, a sprint cycle, right? So each iteration is what we are calling here as a sprint. So each iteration is called a sprint. So that 2 weeks cycle is what we call sprint, or a 4 week cycle is what we call sprint. It should not be more than 4 weeks. And then also, product backlog is a list of where all details are entered to get the end product, right? So if you look at the product backlog, this is like a wish list, right? This is a list of all the details that, the kind of features that we need to build. So in our example of the ABC church, we want to build a church platform, right? All the details that we want to build. So from header menu to footer menu, social media links in the footer menu, the header menu, who we are, what we do, donate button, ministries, contact us, a typical, header menu that you will see on the church platform. So all of this feature set is what we call product backlog, right? Product backlog. So the product backlog is a list of all the wish lists of the stakeholder or the owner of the platform. This is all that I want. So the owner of the platform will share all this list of items that they want to see or they want on their platform. And this is what constitutes, the backlog. This is what we call the backlog. So the backlog, you will be writing stories, user stories. You'll be putting all these things out there, and it will be growing. It's going to be a tall list, and that is what we call product backlog, right? So at the end of the day, when we are able to finish with all the stories that you have populated over there, then we have what? An end product, right? We have a platform. During each sprint, top user stories of the product backlog are selected and are turned into sprint backlog. So here, we're talking about sprint backlog here, sprint backlog. Sprint backlog pretty much are stories from the product backlog that we have prioritized, right? So the sprint backlog is not like it's some, you know, um, some strange or some new type of backlog, but it is just some of the backlog in our product backlog, some of the feature sets or the user stories in our product backlog. That is what we've selected and we've prioritized, right? We've prioritized some of these stories, and we have these stories in our product backlog, our sprint backlog, and that is what our Scrum team or development team, that is what they'll be working on in a specific or a particular sprint, right? So I already talked about sprint is a set of iterations, right? So every sprint, we're going to have work to do. We're going to have some set of stories to work on. But these stories that we're going to work on in that sprint for that 2 weeks, iteration, or maybe 4 weeks iteration, this is what we call in as a sprint backlog, right? Very simple. So, you should know the difference between a product backlog and a sprint backlog, right? Sprint backlog, the 2 weeks iteration, the feature set of stories that we're working on, this is what constitutes the sprint backlog. And the product backlog is the entire wish list, entire user stories or feature sets of the end product. So in sprints as well, or in Scrum, daily, the team members gather together. And yesterday, I think when we looked at some of the ceremonies that are observed in Agile, we talk about daily stand-up meetings. So these days it's not stand-up again because everybody is virtual, right? So how do you determine that people are standing up? So we just say Scrum meeting, right? Or daily Scrum meeting. So back in the days when we used to go to the office, at a particular place in the office, usually by the elevator or somewhere close by, we all stand as a team members. We go over there, we stand, and then we go around. We take turns. What do you work on yesterday? What you're gonna be doing today? And then if there are any impediment, if there are any blockers or a showstopper, right? Is there anything stopping you? So that's what we call a showstopper. So team member works on a defined sprint backlog. So the team members will assign a story to themselves and they begin to work on this story, right? And then team member will check for their daily work, and that is the Scrum meeting. So team members will call out what they've been working on, and if there are any blockers or something, that will also happen. So in Scrum methodology, that's the overall entire picture. And at the end of the sprint, the team will deliver a product functionality. I've already said that when a sprint comes to an end, the stories that have been worked on, or the stories that have been worked on, these stories are deployable or shippable. And what does that mean? It means that if the owner or the stakeholder or the end user wants to go live with these feature sets, it should be stories that can go live, right? It should be at the status that we can deploy. So that means we can go live with just that feature. And that is the end, that is a game plan for sprint and the stories that we work on. So at the end of every sprint, the team will deliver what? A product functionality. So that means that product feature is what? Functional, right? It's functional. All right, let's keep going. So, this is the entire ecosystem or the entire cycle of the Agile sprint iteration. So, we look at the backlog and then we're going to start planning. So we're going to have sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, and so on and so forth, right? It will keep going. So all that we're doing is that we are planning. If you guys can see the mouse pointer, we plan. So by planning, we prioritize some of the feature sets from the product backlog, and then we commit or we place them into the sprint backlog, right? And then we develop it. And then at the end of the sprint, we ship these feature sets. And then what do we do again? We plan again by prioritizing a new set of feature sets, right, into our sprint backlog. So the cycle or the loop keep going on and on and on and on, just like that. So we plan, we design, we build, we test, we review. We plan again sprint 2, we design, we build, we test, we review. So sprint 3, same cycle, right? Same loop: plan, design, build, test, review, and then we launch it, right? So every feature that we commit into the sprint backlog, at the end of the sprint, what did I tell you guys? I said that this, we will deliver a product functionality, right? So we can launch it. So that's why we have the word launch or launch over here. So we plan, we design, we build, we test, we review, and then we launch. We plan, we design, we build, we test, we review, and then we launch. So it keeps going on in that same loop till we will exhaust our product backlog. That means for that specific project, the work is done. So we break down the tasks into that increment, product increment, right, into smaller chunks. And then, we plan different set of sprint iterations. And then once it's done, we move on to the next sprint. Also keep in mind, yesterday I mentioned that we have what we call sprint velocity, right? So we have the sprint velocity, and sprint velocity is nothing but the bandwidth or the capacity or the strength of the team. So as we plan the sprints here, sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, we are mindful of the sprint velocity as well. So we cannot do more than what the team is capable of at any time, with a specific sprint, right? So if the sprint velocity is 30 points or 40 points or whatever, we make sure that the stories that we are committing or we are placing into the sprint backlog, we are placing into the sprint backlog will come up to the cap, will come up to the level, our threshold for our sprint velocity, and will not go more than that. Very important point here. So in sprints or in Agile Scrum or in Agile, we have something we call epic, right? We have something we call epic. And you guys have to keep notice. Now we're getting into deep down into our, the Agile framework proper. So we have something we call epic. So what are epics, right? I have two definitions over here. These are pretty much like a textbook kind of definition. An epic is a large body of work that can be broken down into a number of smaller stories, right? So an epic is a large body of work that can be broken down into a number of smaller stories, right? So if you take a look at our classic example of the ABC Church platform, on ABC Church platform, so we'll have what we do, who we are, donate button, and all those, header menu that is going to be out there on the platform, right? So when you take a look at, the donate feature or functionality on the bottom over there for our church platform, we will have a couple of things that will come, a smaller story that will come under that donate button. For instance, when you click on the donate, right, on our classic example, when you click on the donate, you will see some other functionalities that will come under the donate. For instance, you will see, maybe tithing, offering. The church might have some set of projects that they want individuals or visitors of the site to support them as well. So they may have something like maybe, they have partnered with the city, that is, the city and then the mayor, and then they are building shelters, or they already have their own social, social program or something like that, that they build, or they help the community that they are in, and they build, shelters and homes for the homeless, right? So when people come on to the donate over there, they will see all these type of programs, and there's an opportunity for the site visitor to donate or to give towards some of these projects, right? So they could be going on missions to Southeast Asia or Africa or somewhere, and then they want people to partner with them so that they'll be able to, they'll have enough funds to be able to, come to Africa or go to somewhere in the Southeast Asia for the kind of projects that they have going over there as well. And some of these churches over here, here in America, they have, different kind of projects, water projects, homes, they build shelters, they do all sorts of kind of things for, deprived communities around the world, not only in Southeast Asia and Africa, but sometimes even in, Latin America, right? Even in South America as well. They go down to South America and some other, deprived areas around the globe. So all these features will be under the large body of work, which is going to be donate. You might not necessarily see all the things that I've just mentioned inside the same button with donate, right? It's only when you click on donate, that is where you will see all these other options or programs that you can give to support, right? So the donate here is a large body of work. The donate here is going to be our epic, right? So the epic here, example, is a large body of work that can be broken down into a number of smaller stories. So donate is our epic. And then tithing, if you're a church member or somebody you visited, you want to pay your tithe, that is a user story. If you want to pay an offering, that's a user story as well. If you want to give to support maybe the building of shelters or building of homes for homeless people in the community, another program they have over there, that is another user story that's going to come under that. If you want to give support to support the other outreach, global outreach programs like going into Latin America, going into Southeast Asia, going into some deprived community in Africa, all that also is going to be what, a user story, right? Specific user stories, but they all come under the big umbrella of the donate. That is the epic, donate button. So, what we do, who we are, our ministries, all those things. So every page you see different functionalities come under there, right? So for instance, contact us page. Contact us page, there's going to be a set of information and even some feature functionalities that can come under contact us page. And we can have stories developed under the contact us page as well. And so the contact us page will become like an epic, right? So as we move along and as we begin to get hands-on and go into Jira and then get practicals done, you guys will begin to see, oh, okay, so this will be something that we will categorize under epic, and this is what we will have under user story. We will have as a user story. So you guys begin to get it, right? So another definition over here, the one in green, says that an Azure epic is a body of work that can be broken down into specific tasks, right? Called user stories, based on the needs or the requests of the customer or the end users. So pretty much that is what an epic is about. So in our framework, in Agile framework, we have theme. Theme is like the overarching vision, the overarching thing, and then we have epic, and then we have user stories, right? So keep in mind, guys. So we have talked about epic. Let us now look at user story, right? So what is a user story? I know you guys have heard, and I keep re-echoing and rehashing on the word user story, user story. So what is a user story, right? What is a user story? A user story, so I have two definitions right here. It's all the same. It's not different. These are all textbook, type of, definition, right? A user story. So let's take the first one at the top. So a user story is the smallest unit of work in an Agile framework, right? So you guys remember the example of the donate. So the donate is the bigger one. That is what you see. And then all the other features that comes or other stories that come out of that is the user story. That's the smallest unit of work in an Agile framework. A user story, it is not an end goal, right? It is an end goal, actually. It's an end goal and not a feature. So when we're talking about user story, I've already mentioned that when we are done with every story in a sprint, it is an end goal. That means that that product feature is functional and something that we can deploy, something that we can ship out, right? Something that we can launch for end users to start using. So that's why we're saying that it is what an end goal and not just a feature. So that means it is something that is functional, that can be used, we can launch, we can go live with it, right? And user stories are expressed from the software user's perspective. Now, you guys will really have to keep this statement in mind, because this is going to play a key role all throughout what we're going to be doing right from here on, right? User stories are expressed from the software user's perspective. So as we are moving on, you guys will see an example of a user story, and you will hear the persona, you will see the voice of the persona, the customer, right? The kind of feature that they are able to do, what the end user will be doing. That is what will be expressing the user stories from. So stories are written from that end user or the user's perspective. The other definition over here is that the user story is an informal general explanation of a software feature written from the perspective of the end user or the customer, right? So stories are what? An informal. It's just by saying that I want a page where we will have, the ministries of the church or the different departments in the church, right? Using our classic example of the ABC church. So the user can say, I want a feature where, we'll be able to go live when it's Wednesday, or we have Bible study service on Wednesday, or when we have a Friday service we have Friday service, or we want to go live, or we want to have a feature over there on our platform where Sundays we can go live. That is the user story, right? The user is telling you exactly what they want. So we write it in the perspective or in the voice or persona of the end user, right? Or the customer. I want to have the ability to go live on Sundays for our Sunday service, right? That is an example of a user story. As a user or as a customer or as the admin, I want to go live, right? That is something like that. As a visitor or as a church member, I want to have the ability to pay my tithing and offering on the platform. That is what? Another example of a user story. So a user story is an informal general explanation of a software feature. So they'll just be saying, I want this, I want this, I want a prayer request functionality. So we just have to develop a prayer request functionality over there so that members can come over there. And then when they are on there, they can select the prayer request functionality button. And then they'll go to a page there, they can type in their name, first name, last name, phone number, wherever their location might be. And then maybe there's going to be a text box where they can actually, type in their prayer request. I'm looking for this. I'm praying to God, so that God will grant me this. You'll type it neatly over there and submit, right? That is what a user story, right? But all of these things will come from the stakeholder, will come from the end user. What do you want on your platform? So if we were consulting for the church, the ABC church, the church leader and some of the executive or some of the leadership, they'll sit down with us as a technology company as we are building for them. And then they'll tell us exactly what they want to see on their platform. And this is what we are saying that it is called the user story, right? The user story. And like always, if you have a question, make sure that you have it in the chat box. And when about 5 minutes to the top of the hour, 7 a.m., I'll begin to look at these stories and then address your concerns and questions. All right, let's move on. So this is my own type of thing over here, types of a user story. You're not going to see anything like that on the internet, right? But, from my work so far and my experience so far, I realized that, when you break down user stories into these, categories, it helps, right? And I'm going to share my own stuff, with you. So, I have what I call the design story, okay? And I have what I also term as the implementation story. And then I have the screen wiring story as well. And then from the screen wiring story, I also have what I call the API integration type of story, right? The API integration, type of story. So these are the types of user stories, and this is just me. This is what I have realized from my years in the industry, that is very helpful that you categorize user stories into this segment, right? So a design story. So what's a design story? Sometimes stories are written so that a member of the team, like the UI UX engineer, they'll be able to come up with a design for you, right? As a PO, as a product owner, or as a business analyst, that you're going to be writing stories for the development team to work on. Sometimes it helps to collaborate with the designer or with the UI UX engineer this way, so that the designer will work with different designs of the UI that the development team will be coding, they'll be working on. So what happens is that when you have a design story and then the UI UX engineer gives you an impression or gives you a design, what is going to happen here is that the design card will be very helpful for your implementation story. So as you write a story as a visitor, I want the ability to pay my tithing and offering or whatever. On that page of tithing and offering or whatever, how does that look like? How would that page look like? So by the time you are writing the implementation story, the UI UX engineer guy, because you've given this story to him, he will have come up with, you have been very creative, and he would have come up with an impression of how the page will look like. So what is going to happen here is that you will inject this design story or design card into the implementation story, right? You put it into the, you attach it like, you're attaching a picture or whatever into the story that you write for the development team so that they will work on, right? And then so that the development team, they will not just read your story, but they will have a UI UX design that is going to be it's like the vision for them, right? This is what when they are coding, when they are working, this is going to be something that they're going to be looking up to and saying that this is where we want to get to. This is exactly how our design should look like, or this page should look like, right? So the design story, you collaborate with a UI UX engineer, and then you write a story like that, right? And then implementation story. So I've already even touched on implementation story, right? So as you're writing your story, that story is what we call the implementation story. And then the last two over here, sometimes, you will have a story written and it's maybe screen wiring, right? Screen wiring means that, you write a story that essentially talk about how this page will interface or will connect to another page, right? So that is what we term as screen wiring, or that's what I term as, screen wiring story. So if, a functionality or a feature connects, to a different page or something like that, you essentially will have to get a story that, will detail out, exactly how it's going to be connected. And you will not write it with a title as a screen wiring story, but this is to get you guys grounded, right? Get you guys grounded. So it's very important, screen wiring story. And then API integration type of story as well. So API story, maybe you guys are integrating with a third party, like, our classic example of the donate button. So when people go over to the donate, typically they will see the options like just like I touted or express, like you see Titan offering projects in Africa, projects in Pacific Asia, projects in Latin America. And then they will select the program that they wish it speaks to their heart or ministers to their heart, right? So if they see something in Latin America, they say, oh, I want to support this program or this project. When they click on it, there's going to be an option for them to donate, right? And of course, donating means that they're giving their money, okay? So there's going to be preferred method of payment, Visa, PayPal, and all the other type of preferred method of payments. That's going to be on there. But how did we get here? How will we get there with all this payment preference? There's going to be an API. One day I'll take a time and I'm going to have a session just talking about just APIs, and you guys will get it. So API, so payment gateway. So this one is just straightforward. Payment gateway. We will collaborate with a payment like a processor, and then we'll have an agreement with them. They will give us their APIs. We integrate our platform. PayPal, the same thing. PayPal will charge us a fee for collecting money for us as a church or whatever. The agreement is going to be there. They will have some percentage or cut in whatever that they receive for you. So once agreement is signed and dusted, they will give us their APIs. We'll grab it, their sandbox or whatever SDKs, and then we'll put it on our platform so that when people come on the platform, they will see the option of PayPal, right? And we can have a story written for the API integration of PayPal. We'll have a story written for the API integration of Visa, MasterCard as well. We'll have a story written for any kind of payments like Zelle or anything that got to do with APIs. So we can have specific story that will address any type of integration or any kind of API with a third-party vendor. As long as we are working with a third-party vendor or anybody that will have to consume the API, you need to have an API integration story, right? So this is to keep you guys grounded. Design story, implementation story, screen wiring story, API integration story, right? Very important. Very important. All right, moving on. So let's now look at a template of a user story. So we've talked about the user story. Now let's look at the structure, right? The different components or segments that you will see, or the properties, set of properties you need to see in a typical user story, right? So in a typical user story, you need to have these 5 or 4 goals. There are some of these properties that are a must. You need to have it in there. And there are one property in here that, sometimes you can have it, sometimes it's not mandatory, right? But there are 4 over here that is a must. So every user story, you need to see the role, okay? Number 1, you need to see the role. Number 2, you need to see the goal, okay? You need to see the goal as well. That is number 2. You need to see the goal. Number 3, you need to see the benefit or the outcome, right? You need to see the benefit or the outcome. Number 4, which is the one that is not mandatory, right? It's not something that will always be on there, but sometimes some stories will call for that. So the description or additional information. And then number 5 is the acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria, yes, it's a mandatory. You need to have acceptance criteria come up with a story. So every user story, this is the typical structure, right? This is the typical structure of the user story. So you will see the role, the goal, the benefit or the outcome, the description, and the acceptance criteria. So over here, example of a user story is as a role. So we'll put the persona. Who are we addressing here? Who is this feature for, right? It can be the customer. It can be a visitor, a site visitor. It can be the admin. When we develop a platform, we have different type of people that will make use of the platform, right? We can have the admin of the platform. Some people are admin, right? When I say admin, that means there are people that logs in on the platform somewhere on the admin panel and then change certain things so that on the front end where the customer sees, they'll see information get updated all the time. But we need to arm this admin with some level of privilege or capabilities so that he or she can perform these functions, right? He or she can perform this role, can administer his or her role very well, right? So there might be stories that's going to be written so that, we will have certain features developed for this individual as the admin. There are going to be stories that we're going to write that are going to be stories for a customer, on what they need to see when they come on the platform, right? There are stories that are going to be written for a developer, right? As a developer, I need to be able to have this so that, I can code this and have this done. There are tax stories like that, right? There are stories that are going to be written for a third party or a servicer, right? Who have to perform a role. If we are in the mortgage industry, for instance, right? Just as an example, the mortgage industry, if you want to buy a house or you want to, you want money to buy a home or something like that there are processes, where the application starts with your loan application. There are processes, there are loan originators, there are loan underwriters, and so on and so forth. There are loan advisors. There are so many people that work for the company, and they have different functions and roles. So, and they all have different pages and different places that they will have to administer their function or their role, right? And so we need to arm them. So how do we arm them? We need to have certain features written for them so that they'll be able to perform and administer their function. So, as stories are being written, for instance, if we are in the mortgage domain, we're going to write these stories to be able to take care of all these roles or functions, that people perform on the platform, right? There's going to be stories for visitors, somebody who wants a loan, where when they come on the platform on your www. whatever platform might be, where do they start application? So, and what do they need to see? So stories are going to be written for them. As a user, I want to see where I will start application, where I will begin to fill these forms, right? And those that are internal clients, internal user, that means people that work for the company and they need to administer certain processes and roles. Just like I said, processes, loan originators, loan underwriters, all these functions and roles, we'll need to look at it. And admin, people that need to change some of this, content on the platform. We need to we need to equip all these people. But how do we do that? We need to develop the site such that they will have a place where they can also log in and change some of these things that are out there, right? So as a role, so that satisfies the condition of the role, right? As a role, so we need to have the role inserted in there. We will not say as a role, right? We need to have the right persona in there. So as a customer, as an admin, as a loan advisor, as a loan originator, so we'll have the right role or the persona in there, inserted in there. And then let's go to the goal. When stories are being written, you write it, the second one is the goal. I want the ability to do this. So whatever the function of the persona is, we need to express that also out there. What they need to be able to do. As a role, I want the ability to do XYZ, right? I want the ability to administer my role as an underwriter so that I can set appraisal, I can do this, I can upload tax document of this applicant for home or something like that. All those things. I want the ability to do something, right? So that here is the part for the benefit or the outcome. When people, for instance, in our classic example of the ABC Church platform, right? So when people donate, there's an end goal. It gives them fulfillment. They're able to give to support a worthy cause. So that what I can give to support a project that I like, right? So that is expected outcome. It's an example of expected outcome, right? So that what will happen? I can give, I can pay my tithe, right? I can pay my offering, right? So that I know about this, so that I can administer this function, right? So a story should have this structure in there. The role, the goal, the benefit, description, and the acceptance criteria. Now, this is very, very, very important. I cannot overemphasize that you need to have this in a heartbeat, at a snap of your fingers, right? This is going to be your meat and potato. This is where you're going to be at all the time. Your duty as a product owner, as a business analyst, you're going to be writing stories all the time. This is where you're going to be about 60% of the time. Okay? This is why this is very important. About 60% of the time, you're going to be here. You're going to be writing stories, right? You're going to write in epics. And then in your epics, you'll be, deriving, your stories from the epics. You'll be writing your stories. And the stories will have this set of components. As a user, I want the ability to do this. You write so many stories, and this is where you will live, you will eat, you will sleep, you will do everything as a PO, as a product owner, or as a business analyst. You're going to be here. This is where you will live your entire time, most of the life that you have, right? So keep this in mind. And I cannot reiterate on this. I cannot re-echo on this one. You need to know this. As you're writing your story, you need to know that you have all these segments addressed: the role, the goal, the benefit, the description, acceptance criteria in there, right? This is very, very important. All right, moving on. We can take maybe 2 slides or something, then we can get into the question zone. So user story, fun fact. So I have something over here, very interesting. User story, fun fact. Something that you need to know, and also keep in mind as well. A user story must have only one goal, okay? A user story must do what? Must have only one goal. It's advisable to split stories with 2 goals. So the moment you're writing a story and then you realize that the outcome or the expected condition over there, you are beginning to have 2 goals in there, or you want, when you're writing a story and the goal is, I want the ability to pay my tithe, and I also want the ability to pay my offering, then immediately you know that, no, if it's 2 goals here, then you need to split it. Paying of tithe must be a standalone or independent story by itself. It should not be combined with any other story, right? So the moment you see that, the story is leading up to 2 goals, that's the time that you need to pause and have 1 minute of silence for yourself, and then say, oh, okay, I think I have 2 goals here. I need to split it. Every story that you write, make sure that it has only one goal. So you cannot say that you write a story and the story addresses, 2 things. The story addresses, you want the ability to pay with PayPal and also have the ability to pay with Visa, MasterCard. No, that means the story has 2 goals. Every story that you write, make sure that the story has only one goal. Only one goal. So immediately you realize that you have 2 goals, then that is a good place for you to split the story to just one goal. So when you're writing as a user, as a customer, I want to have the ability to pay my tithe with my Visa, MasterCard, with PayPal, with Zelle, then you know that now you're going overboard, right? It must address just one specific goal. And then if you have something else to work on, make sure that you write another story that will take care of that as well, right? So fun fact, every story must fulfill a requirement with one specific goal or benefit. So again, I'm getting you guys grounded. Every story must fulfill a requirement with one specific goal or benefit. So at the end of the day, the outcome, the expected outcome, so that I can have this, right? As well as a user, as an advisor, as an originator, as a loan underwriter, whatever that your role might be, or the role of the persona might be, I want the ability to do this so that I can, we need to have just one benefit. It cannot be 2, 3 benefits in there. That means you're going overboard. Something is not correct over there, right? Fun fact number 3, size of a user story is measured in story points to deliver value or complexity. So as you're writing your story, we will size the story. I think yesterday I started talking about sizing, and we will get into sizing proper, right? So size of the user story, we measure stories in points. So yesterday I started calling out, the sprint velocity. We talk about the sprint velocity. We talk about, grooming, a little bit on grooming and the stories that you bring up for grooming that we need to estimate it. So stories, we size them. And how do we size them? We size them by assigning some points, right? So we say this story is a 2-point story. It's a 3-point story. It's a 5-point story. And what do we mean by that? It means that, we will have, translated into 3 days in delivering that 3-point story. If it's a 5-point story, that means it's going to take whoever is going to develop maybe 5 days to develop as well, right? So that's why it's a 3-point story. So in a way that it will deliver value, and then also the complexity of that story, that's how we will size it. Requirement of a story has to be of a complete functionality. I've already said this as well, that at the end of the sprint, these stories that were prioritized into the sprint backlog, we will have to deliver a product functionality, right? We will have to deliver a product functionality. So requirement story has to be what? A complete functionality. So when you write your story, make sure the story addresses a functionality, right? Make sure that your story addresses a functionality. Very, very important. Very, very important over here. Make sure that your story addresses a functionality. I think we'll end over here. So I'm going to be looking into chat box, or I'm going to unmute you guys, right? So that, if you guys have questions, you can unmute yourself now, and then, you say whatever question that you have, you can go ahead and say. So you can unmute yourself, and then so far what we have touched on, questions, and I'll do my best to answer before we end today's session. I think I'm going to start, giving you guys some quality time, about 5 minutes, and not rush it. It's very important that there's clarity, right? You guys understand this. So questions. Yes, Kofi, Dadzi, Eben, and then Benny's question. You guys don't have any question? So that means everybody get it. It's straightforward enough, right? Okay, all right. So that brings to the end of today's session. You guys have, I see somebody now asking a question. Okay, all right. We will continue tomorrow.